VSpann, America's communication network for veterans.
Today shines on Sergeant Sharon D. Allen, who served in the 216th Engineer Battalion Combat Heavy, 1st Infantry Division in Operation Iraqi Freedom II. Sharon is an author, a decorated soldier, a public speaker, and we want to welcome Sergeant Sharon D. Allen back to our show. You were on before, Sharon, and everybody has a story, and you've got a story plus. So many things to talk about. And when we left last time, we were talking about the experience in Iraq. And one of the first things that I would think would be very difficult is the assimilation of an American culture into an Iraqi culture. How did you feel about that?
I was fortunate in that I was working side by side the Iraqis. Some American soldiers never really got to meet any of the Iraqis, and so they didn't really have the sense of accomplishment I did when I came home, because I met them. You know, I knew Darbaz and I knew Mustafa, and I cared about them, you know, and their future. But there were some cultural differences. I didn't really get to speak to many of the Arabs down south. Up north in Kurdistan, it was a lot safer where I was, and I had a lot more interaction with the Iraqis, so we could sit around and talk. And I actually became conversational in Kurdish. But one of the things that I thought was funny was, you know, they can have multiple wives, and they couldn't, you know, we couldn't understand that, but they couldn't understand that we can have multiple wives, just not at the same time. And they didn't understand what divorce was, you know, and because the one guy told me that in Iraq they worked their whole lives to get enough money to afford to get married. And I said, in America, it's free to get married, it costs you everything to get divorced. So there were just some things that we realized that we're probably more alike than we're not. It's just the superficial stuff that you have to get through. When
you're deployed, now you were deployed directly to the platoon in Iraq, and the Iraqis who are there probably speak English. You have translators and so forth, but how do you learn a language that's so, no pun intended, foreign to us?
Well, actually, we did not have translators, and we certainly didn't have enough translators. We had two in Tikrit, and one of them, Ali, I worked with him every day for 2 weeks at a batch plan. I was teaching him in English, and he was teaching me Arabic, and then I was learning Turkish through Arabic, and then it turned out that he was actually plotting mortars. So he was trying to kill us the whole time. Then we had another translator who I never met, named OJ, who was beheaded by the Iraqis for helping us. But regardless, we wouldn't have had a translator where we were, because we were out in the middle of nowhere. So there might have been 40 Americans. They're not going to give you a translator. So I had to just learn. And it was funny, too, because I'm learning Kurdish or Arabic without speaking to somebody who speaks English. So they would point to a dirty brick white wall, and they'd say Kashi. I don't know if that means dirty brick, white, or wall, but I just kind of winged it. Most communication is nonverbal anyway. But up in Kurdistan, I actually learned it because we had so much interaction with them that we would play volleyball. And I figured out that they were cheating at keeping score. So the first thing I learned how to do was count to 21.
Now, you talked about Iraq and the Kurdish people. There is a difference between those two cultures.
Yes. The Kurds are mainly Christian. They're different ethnically, but their living conditions and everything is very different. They're trying to get their own country, Kurdistan. Most of the Iraqis hate the Kurds. Most of the Turks hate the Kurds. Nobody likes the Kurds. We backed the Kurds in Desert Storm, and I was surprised. I thought that they would hate us because we pulled out, you know, and they had to live with the repercussions of Desert Storm. I didn't. But it turns out they loved us because I guess we're the only people who ever backed them. But they called me Sharon because they couldn't say Sharon. And by the end, my name kept getting longer and longer, and it was like Cheyenne, and I didn't even know what they were talking about at the end, but I guess they add a syllable to denote respect. So by the end, I was like Queen Cheyenneanahana because I was speaking Kurdish to them.
How would you define what the animosity toward the Kurdish is?
I'm sure that is something that goes back thousands of years that I don't really know. I mean, it's like the Sunnis and the Shiites. They don't get along, but they do get along in hating the Kurds. So there were 3 different factions that we were dealing with. Besides that, we also had Turks and I think some Turkmen too that worked there. So when I would meet somebody, I would greet them in all 3 languages and see which one they responded to because I couldn't tell them all apart.
There's a country song. I've been a country DJ for many years, and Alan Jackson has a song, "Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning?" And one of the lines in there is, I don't know the difference between Iraq and Iran. And many of us don't really understand the differences that are keeping all of these factions so far apart. And we take sides, but we don't know why.
Yeah, we actually had, if we put a porta potty out there and a Sunni used it, then a Shiite wouldn't use it afterwards. For us, it didn't make any sense, but we just knew that we couldn't do that. We knew that we had to have 2 of them there. But again, I didn't really talk to the Muslims that much to understand where all the fighting came from. But I did know that there was a lot of animosity between the Kurds and the Arabs, and that's why I had such a good time in Kurdistan, because I'm not saying that they are better people than the Arabs, but they were on our side. So everybody who wasn't trying to kill me was my friend, and they did not want to kill me. So I love the Kurds. This
could be probably analogous to the Hatfields and McCoys.
Yeah, possibly. I would. The guys in my platoon asked me why I'm hanging out with the Kurds and why I'm learning Kurdish. And on convoys, I'd yell out the window, "Hazm la Kurdistana," which means I love Kurdistan. But I had to be very careful when to stop yelling that out the window.
I always open my radio show. I've been doing radio for 44 years, Sharon, and I always open my show with an Aesop statement that says, "No act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted." Are there nonverbal things that you could relate to that were acts of kindness?
Toward me?
To the Iraqis.
To the Iraqis from the Americans?
Yes.
Actually, when I came home on leave and I was watching the news, it was like they were reporting a different war. I didn't even know what they were talking about. I was there for the invasion of Samarra. Most of our convoys, the kids were on the side of the road waving at us. But when I first got there, a lot of the women would turn away from us. By the time I came home 11 months later, I had some of them wave to me in burqas, and the kids would wave to us. So they didn't hate us as much as the news tried to report, but I never saw a reporter out there either. I think they were mainly in Baghdad. I think the problem is the country is so big that what's going on in Mosul might not be going on in Tikrit, and how soldiers are received in Tikrit might be different than Samarra. The way I looked at it was, I don't know if the war was a good thing for the Americans or the Iraqis, but I know that what I personally did was a good thing for the Iraqis. So everything I did, I feel very proud of.
Well, we're talking about the cultural differences in Iraq and the Americans, but I'm going to bet that there are some cultural differences that probably exist closer to home. We'll talk about that when VSpann returns.
I'm State Senator Kirk Dillard from the western suburbs of Chicago. These are tough economic times for all professions, but there is one way to find good, wholesome employment in a difficult economy if you're interested in broadcasting and communications. The Illinois Center for Broadcasting has an excellent track record for the placement of their graduates. I see them all the time at the various radio stations, television stations, and places that I visit. And in these difficult times when you're looking for a job, you want to have a good education, and the Illinois Center for Broadcasting is a great place to start.
VSpann, the Veterans Communications Network.
Welcome back to VSpann. Our VSpann Spotlight today is on Sergeant Sharon D. Allen, and we were talking earlier about the cultural differences between the Iraqs and the Americans, but closer to home, Sharon, when you get thrown into a platoon of men and women from all over the country, I'm thinking you've got some cultural differences there.
My platoon was not from all over the country. It was from Portsmouth, Ohio, right on the border of West Virginia. They were very proud rednecks. And so Kim was the other fueler. Kim and I were the first women in the platoon, and we were also both Yankees. And so just to like rub it in a little bit on my rack, I actually had a sign that said, "The North shall maintain victory." They did not think that was funny at all. I loved it. But I had to say, though, I could not have asked for a better group of guys to be in war with, but to live with them, I could have probably asked for a better group of guys. And there were no breaks, because we would live in a 50-meter radius. You could not get mad and go for a walk. You know, you had to stay. Sometimes you couldn't leave the building, or you certainly couldn't leave the area of operation. So you had to, if you were angry at somebody, you just had to get it all out, because you still had to sleep next to that person, you know, half an hour later. So it's a very unique living situation, and it's one that's affected me to this day, because I can't carry a grudge, even if I should. Even if somebody deserves it, I get over things within a few hours, because you had to out there.
God love you. So you live with someone, you fight with them, you're in a war together. What do you do for entertainment?
We threw rocks and we wrestled, because that's all that there was to do. The sun miraculously goes down about 5 o'clock, and I don't know where the moon is, but it's not in Iraq. So there were some places you couldn't even use a flashlight. All you could do is sit around and talk. So I got to know the guys really well, because there was no TV. You couldn't read after 5 o'clock, so all you could do was really, you know, talk to one another. But it was funny though. One of the guys out there, Bear, he was one of my best friends out there, and I realized when he started treating me like his wife was when he started to agree with everything I said, and I'd say, "You're not even listening to me right now, because you're agreeing with me. I'm not your wife, Bear." "Oh, okay." You'd have to start listening to me again.
I always wind up getting into arguments over the dumbest things. Well, this morning my wife and I got into an argument. She was sitting there and she said, "You always yawn when I'm talking to you." We stopped it, and I said, "I'm not yawning, I'm trying to say something." You know? Yeah, then that leads into more things and so forth. But when you're in a combat situation, any situation in life, if something dangerous happens and nobody gets hurt, it's funny.
Oh, absolutely.
But when somebody gets hurt,
it's still funny. I mean, you have to. I write about things that are very serious and things that, you know, are. You know, sometimes I write about things where people got injured and some people got killed, but most of the time you had to laugh about it anyway, because it's the only way you're going to survive it. So you have to. I always sign all of my books, if you can laugh at it, you can live through it, because that's just the way sometimes you have to cope with a situation. Like Christmas time, we went around and sang carols. I rewrote all these songs and made them about Iraq. You know, I wrote Jingle Bells. Dashing down the road in a jacked up 916, through Aidi Alley we go, trying to look mean, and we go around and sing to people, you know, and it was just, you have to just do the best with what you have.
Now, when you do something like that, that has to invoke some feelings of friendship. Can you recount any situation where the Kurds gave an act of kindness to you?
Absolutely. They have this stuff called chai. I called it liquid crack. It's supposedly tea, but I was quickly addicted to it. And so I'd go around to the guard shacks and try to get chai. And I didn't really have anything to trade them, except my buddy Ranley had a guitar, and they love American music. They love Michael Jackson and Shakira, and they also liked Monica Lewinsky, because they asked us about her all the time. But we would go to the guard shacks and we would play guitar, and we'd sing Poison or, you know, whatever. We'd make up the lyrics half the time. And so every night I got to really know these guys. We called our band Chai High Crash, and they'd sing with us. And I'll tell you what, you've never lived until you've sat around a campfire with a bunch of Kurdish soldiers, all with AK-47s, and they're singing the Beatles, but they don't know the words, so they're singing Little P. Little P, Little P, at the top of their lungs. It was awesome. But the coolest thing that ever happened to me in Iraq is probably one of the coolest things that happened to me in my life. I told you I was conversational in Kurdish, so I was talking and I was eating with the Kurdish militia, the Peshmerga, the officers. So I'd sit there with the colonel or the major or something like that, which was kind of normal. But at one point, a regular soldier asked me to eat with him in their tent. So I go to my platoon sergeant, and I know this is going to sound weird back in the States, but I was completely safe. And my platoon sergeant said, "Yeah, go ahead. You can eat with the soldiers." Well, the food out there is actually really bland. You'd think it would be kind of either sour or sweet or something, but it was just really bland because spices are very expensive. And so when this guy, Darbaz, laid out the spread for us, it was like shish kebabs. I don't even know where they got it. It was meat and vegetables and bread, and then he handed me the packet of spices. And our translator told us that that probably cost him a month's wage.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Sharon, we're going to take a short break, but when we return, we're going to get more insights on her experiences during the Iraq War, and also with all of the accomplishments that she has, including being a correspondent, a columnist, a writer, and a speaker. She's also a chaplain, and you'll be surprised at who she is with. That's up next on VSpann.
ICB works because it gives you the hands-on training you will need to take advantage of real-life opportunities. While I was a student here, I learned everything from radio production in the radio studios to video production and editing, and use those skills in my job now. I had an internship for 1 week with the PGA Tour Network on Sirius XM Radio, and because of the things that I learned here, I was able to parlay that internship into a full-time job covering the PGA Tour. We produce live play-by-play from every PGA Tour event, and this job has taken me all over the country and to several others. Without the skills I learned here at the Illinois Center for Broadcasting, I would have never made it as far as I have.
You love watching and talking about sports, so why not turn that passion into a career in sports broadcasting at the Illinois Center for Broadcasting?
Hi, I'm Matt Abaticola from Sports Radio 670 The Score, Chicago's #1 sports talk station. I'm a graduate of the Illinois Center for Broadcasting, graduated in 2001, and I wouldn't be where I'm at today without the time that I spent at the Illinois Center for Broadcasting.
With a 10-month program and financial aid available, you'll learn to be on the air and behind the scenes.
The great aspect of it is that you're working on equipment that's being used in the marketplace today. It's not outdated material, it's not outdated equipment, they're not teaching you old techniques. You're learning actual techniques and working on equipment that are being used in marketplaces today all over the country.
For more information, go to beonair.com/Chicago Sports or text Chicago Sports to 33239 or call 630-916-1700. The Illinois Center for Broadcasting, where sports broadcasting careers begin.
VSpann, the American Veterans Communications Network.
This is VSpann. Our VSpann spotlight is on Sharon D. Allen. Has a lot of credentials, has done a lot, has a great story to tell, and now, since returning home, is a chaplain. You can add that to your resume at the VFW. And the VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, is probably like all organizations, Sharon, and that is that they have trouble recruiting new people. I'm in a scuba club. We can't get new people. It's the same thing across all organizations. VFW and the American Legion, for example, just to name two, offer tremendous programs. Now, what caused you to want to get involved with the Veterans of Foreign Wars?
I like old guys. I do. I like sitting around talking to old guys in bars. I really do. That's what first got me to join the VFW. But the VFW, it does a lot for returning veterans. The problem is that they don't know about it because everybody thinks the VFW is just a bunch of old guys, and they don't necessarily enjoy that. But when I first came home, I moved to Chicago as well because I got a new job. So I was back in America and I didn't know anybody. And it was 4th of July and I was in a Mexican neighborhood where they like to shoot guns. And so I went to the American Legion because I knew that everybody in that bar would know what was going on with me and it would be okay. And it was kind of funny though because it was a legitimate members only club and they had like styrofoam in the windows and everything because they knew everybody was going to be like Rain Man in the corner. It was okay. But they know that. So if I have a problem, if I have an issue, even if it's not an official program through the VFW, those guys at the VFW know what I'm talking about. And I think that the best thing that I got out of the war was I was able to come home and these guys will tell me things that they've never told anybody because I understand their language, I use the same words, but I was in a different conflict. So it's kind of like telling a stranger a story, but a stranger who understands. And also, I'm not trying to one-up them. They're not trying to impress me because I wasn't in Vietnam, I wasn't in Korea, I wasn't in World War II, I was in Iraq. So I can sit there and listen to their stories without judging them in any way, but with understanding. And I cannot tell you how many veterans I've had literally start crying to me because they told me something that they've never told, they couldn't tell their wives, they couldn't tell the guys. Oh, that's the other benefit. I'm a woman, so sometimes it's easier for them to tell me things that they would consider letting down their guard. So that's been the best thing, is that I can sit there and have an 85-year-old guy tell me something that he's been carrying around for the last 50 years and never told anybody.
When everybody has a story, and they do, you can look at the most unassuming man or woman, and once you get inside them to learn what they're all about, it would probably be good therapy for them and just a wonderful way of communicating and letting the legacy live on if they were to write these things down.
I consider it kind of, that's an added responsibility I've taken on, because a lot of my book isn't my stories, it's other people's stories, because I really want these stories to get out because they're really funny. And an interesting thing from what I've written is that I get different reactions from people. I'll write something and I think it's just hilarious, and an Afghanistan vet will think it's hilarious, a Vietnam vet will think it's poignant. Or I'll write something and a civilian thinks, oh wow. And to me it was just like a throwaway story. It was just an interesting little anecdote. And so a lot of writing is not what you write, is about what people read. And sometimes they don't read what I wrote, but as long as they get something out of it, then I'm happy.
That's it. And when you look at a veteran, I don't know what the percentage of the American population is currently serving, but I would think nearly every American is touched by a veteran in one way, shape, or form.
Well, less than 1% of Americans are themselves veterans, so that's not necessarily true. They are serving.
Serving, right.
So a lot of people know World War II vets. A lot of people know Vietnam vets. Very few people know Iraq War vets, I think. And I'm certainly not what they think of when they think veteran or chaplain of the VFW. And so I kind of get a kick out of that. I'm also a mechanic. I'm just not what people envision for any of this stuff. But they can see that I am a pretty typical veteran, actually. I'm hopefully soon I'll be a typical member of the VFW, because we need to get younger people involved to help the next people coming back, because the Iraq War vets can help the Afghanistan vets.
And these organizations that exist, Sharon, like the VFW, like the American Legion, do offer valuable and helpful programs for veterans.
Absolutely, and they can lead you to the ones that they don't actually offer. You can get anything that you need to know. I'm pretty sure you could walk into a VFW or an American Legion. If they don't know the answer, they can get it for you.
Yeah, and there are certainly much more than fish fries on Friday.
But there is cheap beer.
Well, that almost makes it worth joining right there.
That's
that's what I'm thinking.
For the old guys and the cheap beer.
If you were to say one of the benefits that you like about the VFW, what do you think it would be?
Well, I am, as a chaplain, I used to be a member of the Honor Guard too. And so I go out there and I do the funerals for people I do know and the people that I don't know. And I think that is awesome, that even though, like when I die, that there are going to be guys there that I may have never met, but they're going to give me that honor in my death that I served my country. And I think that is something awesome that we give them.
Yeah, a place of honor.
And we don't forget.
That's right. Well, the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, those are all organizations that support veterans, including what the intent of the Veterans Special Programs American National Network is. And that's VSpann, a place where we can get special programming like this communicated so people know where to go for not only help, but for camaraderie.
Absolutely. That's the one thing you miss when you come home, is the camaraderie. I've almost re-upped about 24 times just because I missed that. Then I go to the VFW.
There you go. And we've been talking with Sharon D. Allen here on VSpann, enlightening conversation, and it's just the start of the story. And the story continues on VSpann. As more stories unfold, you will hear them on the Veterans Special Programs American National Network. This presentation was broadcast and recorded by the broadcast professionals at the Illinois Center of Broadcasting, the Lombard campus. And we want to thank you for being a part of our day, and we'll look forward to seeing you the next time right here on VSpann.
Serving the American veterans community with news, information, and entertainment. This is VSpann.
VSpann is a network designed to serve the American veteran. Its mission is to inform, inspire, enlighten, honor, remember, and entertain. Soldiers and veterans will not ask for our help, but it needs to be given nevertheless. Winston Churchill once said, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." This sentiment stands true today.
Veterans deserve this. We owe them, not the other way around.
It's time to pay back our debt to our soldiers and our veterans. It's time for VSpann.